deep state. Hi guys, it's Alan. And again, being a target individual, it is a weird thing when I found out about it. Because I'd literally by that time already gone 30 years just with a side and I had just figured at that time, after 30 years, somebody had botched up an operation when I was 14. And I don't think ever did I have an idea that I was being a guinea pig or that it was intentional. I had no enemies. But then realizing when they started doing something called V2K, which it's part of the military, and it was in Wired magazine once, but then it was in the Army website, but then Wired magazine said that Army or Navy had pulled the V2K article from its website because they still wanted part of the active denial, ADS, active denial system or service, whatever. And it is literally the ability to kind of implant a thought in a brain. And now, if you said something like this years ago, the crazy looks you would get and be called crazy. But now with microchips in the brain and Elon Musk even calling it telepathy, TI's admitting about synthetic telepathy isn't, we're right on target, excuse the pun. And the term deep state, and it's almost literally like the deep state, OSS, CIA, what used to be called the OSS. And it was strange because I had no enemies and I was never disrespectful to military or law enforcement, anybody. And yet they did this to me, studying for the ministry, but even then I wasn't like an asshole about religion. I just, ever. And I would have even apologized to saying asshole. It's like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend, Always looking out for the rights and sensibilities of others and their beliefs. But I literally thought, because of my side pain, and I thought, well, I broke my arm and separated my shoulder when I was 14, football practice. And I thought maybe they screwed up something and lingered and they were trying their best and went to specialists, and never would have thought I was a guinea pig for something. It wasn't until they started doing the weird voice and then thank God after 30 years praying every night and not getting any emotions, not feeling much because I thought I took the religion too seriously and, dying to self and, blocking your emotions and repression and picking up your cross and all that kind of stuff. But I didn't tell too many because I didn't want to offend them or have it happen to them either by having questions or doubts about it. But it definitely does make you look upon some of the people of your own, that they could go and keep that silent from you and got paid for it. To be put you as a teenager in a torture program, and then after a number of years and it became embarrassing or something, that now they know that I know. And it's like Look Out for Charlie. I like Look Out for Charlie. But it's like encouraging people, this person hasn't done any Nazi shit, which is to act out, to do something. And yeah, some neighbors really are. There's some in the TI community that say that neighbors aren't, but yeah, I'm not saying for every TI. And it's good not to freak out on your neighbors because after a while you get to know them or a little bit, And even if they are, they might mellow out, and you realize they're, people, and you can hang out and get to know them a little bit. They're okay. But I also know, like Robert, anyway, with this stuff, a lot of this, it makes you wonder, because there's a lot of stuff with the COVID, and, is this something through nanotechnology? Is this something that's through nanotechnology, I remember when you're a TI, it makes you freak out. Like, I need to warn people. And it's the first time I ever did anything overtly on purpose to get in trouble so that they would know about it. I sprayed some chalk in front of the city hall in Dallas about no targeting people, and in front of a cop car when police were in with the lights on, the car lights, because I wanted them to see it and talk to me so that they would know and discuss it with other cops. Like, this is really wrong. Common sense to do this to somebody who never had any enemies, didn't hurt any of them, anybody. And, and then it happened is 3 months later after doing that, COVID hit in China. This is like in August, July or August that I did that. And so the next month I had to go to court. They didn't arrest me, to their credit. I appreciate that. So they did show some compassion. It was my first offense, and I did it on purpose, but I wanted them to know, I know that literally for 30 years I was used experimentally by our military, and military passes their new technologies into local police stations to try it out on unsuspecting civilians. And whether it be hospitals, taking grant money from the NIH and telling the police, if the person's still alive after 10 or 20 years or 30, we need to get rid of this guy before that person finds out. And then they find out. And then they put on the targeted individual stuff, and the Myron Mays, the Gavin Longs, and they all under the umbrella of mental health. Like, is this so that when you say you have V2K, voice to scope, you're hearing voices, it follows psychiatrists may have heard or may not have heard or have just been paid off. And you just see how corrupt. It's not just big city liberals. And when you're kind of from a conservative Republican town, small towns have a tendency to be more religious or promote religion, Christianity, and conservative values. In big city, because of different cultures and different colors and cultures and religions, has to be more diversity, and that increases liberal open-mindedness. Like, oh, I know how I am, but other people are human and they have different, so it makes you by nature more. Or maybe it won't. Maybe it makes you just more double down on who you are, and other people are assholes because they're not you or your family. But to think that they would go along to somebody who hasn't hurt anybody. Anyway, the idea that these injections would somehow institute a new TI program for the masses. Again, conservatives are called like conspiracy theories, but a lot of those conspiracies did pan out. But I hope, and I kind of really, because I noticed that the TI community in 2019, it was in like tons of different cities around the world, these rallies. But then there was, in London and Spain and France and Brussels and Japan, but then the COVID hit, and then suddenly it wasn't that big. Then it's like they wanted all of this to happen, and then with the COVID, they wanted the big freak out then. But then they wanted it to, it's still going on. People are, however many there really are of TIs, we don't know. But I hope it's not. On one hand, you kind of want others that you can relate to, but you also want to warn people and hope that it's not true. But you still kind of warn them. So TIs kind of get probably a lot of the same emails, a lot of the same algorithms that pop up, and a couple doctors that are promoting injections being bioweapons. And I have nothing to say because I don't know. There's a lot of stuff that's hidden about that conversation, a lot of stuff that's still not really revealed. The biggest shocking thing, I think, is Rand Paul saying that somebody from DARPA said 13 of 15 federal agencies were offered an opportunity to get money to go in on the vaccine injections or whatever. I won't even say that word. Injectables or whatever. And again, to add to the conspiracy. And nobody, and you would think the uproar of that, but even then, there was more uproar over George Floyd, which deserved some, no doubt about it. And then a lot of this stuff has to do with a lot of the advertisement for this type of thinking also has to do with last day prophecy and eschatology, Antichrist and 666. And being a theology student since I was 13, I'm not sure what to make of it. I can hear, it's just, any old school knows it's supposed to be in the hand or the forehead, but through the bloodline of the genetics of your whole body. And I guess they'll try to make it fit, but to know that they're far advanced. And with Robert Duncan, well, I know Robert Duncan said that the DO program in the military was spoke at page 228 or 282 on page of Project Soulcatcher, that they will reveal the DO program and make it public, So I'm hoping that will, and that they can finally, it's admitted now that they have these programs. America does, and China and Russia. But that our military will admit that they do this and practice on regular people during operations and don't tell the person, and how immoral. The definition of immorality. People get worried about smoking or drinking or having sex outside. Those are issues. Putting a torture device in the body of a child or a teenager or a man or a woman when they're under anesthesia for the purpose of causing pain, and to have no one tell you about it for 30 years. That's why you have to go and get pain meds. That's why you have to spend a lot of your, time and money and live in pain. And it took me 30 years to even find out that that's really what went on. I kept on praying every night, Lord, tell me what this is so they can heal it, surgery, something. They never wanted to heal it. I asked it sent to specialists, and they sent me to specialists. So I was thankful for that. They did give me pain meds, and I'm very thankful because they could have done nothing. So I am thankful for what they did, but I also think if they told me the whole truth, that they could have lost their job, not just their job, but license. So I am sympathetic about that too. But when you're the patient on the receiving end of something and have lived your entire life that, let's just say it makes you look at them in a different way, and the people of your hometown. Not that I would ever, even in the sense of justice, I wouldn't want, if I had the power, I wouldn't want to do the same thing to them to get revenge. I just wouldn't. I wouldn't want to sue them to obscurity or take their pensions, because I would like to take every obstacle out of the road from getting healed myself so they can't make up an excuse, and so that I could actually feel enough to go out and warn more people, and protest against it. It's not to make money. It's just to say this is wrong and make it illegal, and because I've seen what people have done. Look at my own case for money. Put a torture device in a body and keep quiet for 30 years. Non-disclosure agreements, I bet. And anyway, it's and so hopefully Robert Duncan is right that next year, 2025, will be the year that they finally are more open and have the Havana syndrome discussions, which they admit that our military has these directed energy weapons, and they use different means, but sometimes they're just implantables. I even have a book, MK Ultra Tech or Technologies, and it shows the patents and the whole written stuff on the patents for even implantables, and that's the word. So when the crazy looking person in the movie say the government implanted my tooth, they're implanted, and they're made to look all wide-eyed and crazy. No, there's patents to that technology. They actually have done this to people, and you expect more. You don't just expect more. You just wouldn't dream that they would do something. Or after doing it, you think the remorse, the shame, or 30 years of just knowing that you found out after 30 years. And it's kind of it's like looking at people that you used to respect and realize they're serial killers. They would, if you gave them money, they would become serial killers. If their job told them to do it again, they would. So their opinion, at least from my viewpoint, on ethics, morals, religion, politics, I'll be listening and, oh, okay. I'll be nice, but yeah. So, but with synthetic, anyway. So hopefully with Elon Musk and admittingly calling it telepathy, the chip, and it's like Stephen Hawking's machine could literally read his mind and put it on the monitor so that he could communicate, and it would verbally say out loud what the monitor and what Stephen Hawking was thinking. It would move the cursor, the mouse, and it would allow him to communicate, which is a wonderful thing for the handicapped. Wonderful. God bless it. But a lot of times, as Robert Duncan was saying, the scientists, CIA scientists, is that sometimes they'll ask if besides a good product, how can the military use it as a weapon? And I'm one of those unlucky people that they've chosen. And it's almost like a Calvinistic double predestination in a negative way for me as a theology student. It's like predestined to be used in that manner by a Christian community when I was studying for the ministry myself. And it does make you look at them in a different way. Anyway, I hope the People's Directed Energy Weapons Caucus, I hope before they're piling tons of money, I hope they'll get a chance to think about this, because what if it happened to their child or their neighbors, or the shame and the embarrassment of a town allowing this and covering up for it. It'd be like the towns of MK Ultra, or it's like when the United States liberated Auschwitz and then forcibly, out of fucking anger, made the people of that town march by the ovens and said, this is what you allowed. and then watch them work up fake tears like they didn't know. They were getting money. They were getting paid. And they kept quiet, but then the Americans marched the civilians of that town into Auschwitz or Birkenbau, whatever it was called, I forget, to show them. And you would have thought, never again, like never forget. And you would have hoped with the Geneva Convention that there would never be a MK Ultra, never a Holocaust, or never an MK Ultra, never a Sydney chemist to start MK Ultra, or to use religion as a cover story, or eschatology and Antichrist to warn people, and again try to make a person look foolish who's never hurt anybody. Just because our government can never, ever, ever say they're sorry or that they were wrong. That's one thing I did like about Trump. I would have voted for Bernie, but I saw what they did to Bernie. So, and it was nice to hear Trump say, hey, some of the ideas that we thought were okay aren't. And I agreed with that. Like he was saying that pot is legal in some states. It shouldn't be criminalized in other states when it's legal just across the border in another state. I thought that's compassion. Even Kamala was saying now that drugs should be decriminalized. A lot of drugs should be. So a person's life should be destroyed just because whether if it's an addiction or they just want to feel better or something, as long as they're not hurting anybody. So anyway, I'm not trying to be political, Republican or Democrat. I just hope that they will make this technology illegal and not to experiment on its civilians or citizens or prisoners, and that doctors, city halls, hospitals would have the guts to say no, even if it means giving up some of that federal money, just to say no. And to bring it out in the open and say, this is disgusting. And it's like Project 2025, getting rid of the CIA. As much as sometimes they might do some good, or the FBI, the idea of setting up innocent people just to make your job look important. You set innocent people up to make them do a crime they wouldn't have done unless without your influence. And then you jack them up with emotion or fear. They do a crime that they wouldn't have normally done. And then the FBI swoops in and say, see how important we are. We stopped this from happening. That's where they are, whether it's Gretchen Whitmer's kidnapping, January 6th. Quit setting up innocent people. It's just common sense. Anything for a buck. You wouldn't want it done to your son, your daughter, your parents. So anyway, that's my soapbox. So sorry for the ominous light. That's about as bright as I can make it right there. So I'll talk to you later. And inspiration for the other TIs out there, I hope. And I'm glad for Targeted Justice and PACs and for the other TI groups that are getting the word out. So thank you to them. Okay, bye-bye.